evening, social media.
Hey, social
Welcome
media.
to Veterans Breakfast Club. We have a great show planned for you this Monday evening. We're going to get the music started and we're going to let everybody in.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Veterans Breakfast Club. I am Todd DiPastino, the executive director and founder of the Veterans Breakfast Club. We're a nonprofit based in Pittsburgh. We've been around since 2008, getting together with veterans and having them share stories. Tonight, we have two veterans with us. This is two for the price of one. They're two Marines, and together, they contributed well over 50 years of service to the United States Marine Corps, and what more than that, their father and son. John R. Bates. Hi, John. How are you?
Hello, aloha. Welcome to
Uh,
Hawaii.
so you gave away where you are calling from. You're calling from Hawaii. It's about 1 o'clock there, p.m. And this is your son, Josh.
It
Hey,
is.
hello.
John, did you encourage I'm just going to jump right into this even before I make some announcements and talk further. I'm curious because we haven't discussed this. Did you encourage Josh to join the Marine Corps? Did you discourage him? Or was this something that he just did on his own and you didn't have a role?
Is a combination really of all three because but right as he was entering Punahou High School here on the island, General Krulak, Lieutenant General at the time, 3-star, was the commander of Fleet Marine Forces Pacific. And General Kulak was kind enough to bring us back out because of the things we'd done for him before. And so he knew us and he knew Josh pretty well. And he said, in casual conversation, he said, well, what's Josh going to do in life? And I said, well, what I'd like him to do, and we've not really discussed it yet, but I'd like for him to get an appointment to the Naval Academy. And General Kulak said, And he said, well, have him come talk to me. So that either that afternoon or whenever it was available on a schedule, sent Josh up to see him. And the meeting was quite lengthy, and I was, a 3-star with a young kid. That was highly unusual. And so Josh came home, and we lived at Camp Smith, by the way, which was about a 10-minute walk from my office to the house. And Josh came back home. I said, well, what did the general tell you? And he said, well, first of all, don't go to the Naval Academy. I thought, what? And he said, no. And the reason for that's when the Naval Academy had two cheating scandals within 2 years. I mean,
Yes.
it was the Naval Academy, and Krulak had graduated from the Naval Academy, and I was really surprised. And I said, well, what did he tell you? And he said, well, he wants me to get an NROTC scholarship and go Marine option, and that way he can he can have a real life and still and get a great education.
Right. And then
So that's what happened. So
and I
Josh, I'll let you fill in.
Yeah, no, that's essentially. I took his advice, and I'd actually already been to the recruiter down in Honolulu before, and because I didn't know that program really ever existed. It wasn't something that was very well advertised, and especially at my high school. So yeah, I did apply, and I think honestly, coming in from from the Hawaii district, which was like Okinawa, Guam, and Hawaii, there were not a lot of applicants, so I didn't have to have like that stellar of grades to get the call. But yeah, so I got the scholarship, and off to San Diego from there.
Josh, was it a foregone conclusion? I mean, all throughout your childhood growing up that you were going to be in the Marine Corps?
No, I wouldn't say the whole time, but by the time I hit high school, that's when I was that's when I started kind of itching for for
Yeah.
the adventure and the
Yeah.
challenge.
Well,
So.
and I pulled him aside and I said, well, Josh, why is it that you're coming in the Marine Corps? And he gave me a very honest answer. He said, well, first of all, it's the only thing I've known. And second of all, I can serve our country. So I thought, good to go.
Yeah, two good answers. Well, let me just introduce you just a little bit. We have John R. Bates, Colonel, retired Colonel, Marine Corps, who served between, and I'm going to say this correctly, 1966 and 2005. That's a period that spans almost 40 years, 5 different decades, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and then the post 9/11 conflicts. You lived through an amazing swath of history, Colonel John, and Josh is also a colonel, retired, 20 years,
Lieutenant Colonel. Yeah.
Lieutenant Colonel,
Yeah.
20 years, 22 years.
Yeah, for retirement purposes, 20. I was in
Okay.
with the reserves.
Okay.
It was active duty 20. Yeah.
Very good. So we're going to have you share your stories because, John, I mean, the history you lived through is fascinating, and Josh, the more recent history that you lived through is also fascinating, and you've written a book about it, and I want to make sure that we talk to you about that. Before we do that, I do want to let people know that if you're in Western Pennsylvania, we're having an in-person breakfast on Wednesday, October 1st. This is our annual first Wednesday of the month, October breakfast in Beaver County at Seven Oaks Country Club. They roll out the red carpet for the Veterans Breakfast Club there. It's a wonderful breakfast. I think we have 110 people signed up for this event already. You're welcome to attend if you'd like. You don't have to be a veteran to attend. We will just go around the room with the microphone. There is Reverend Ben, the back of him. He's emceeing an event there with a veteran sharing his story. And that's what we do for 90 minutes. It starts at 8:30. We have breakfast from 8:30 to 9 o'clock. The program starts. We do 90 minutes of veteran stories, and you never know what you're going to hear. So that is on Wednesday, October 1st. If you're in the area, would love to have you join us. We do about, and I'm going on about this a little bit. We don't usually talk about our in-person events here on in our virtual space, but I want to let people know that we're trying new locations. I was just out in Philadelphia last week, or Montgomery County last week. I'm going to be we're going to be in Youngstown, Ohio. We have something pretty big coming up early next year in California. So we're really getting up and about, and let us know if you're interested in hosting an event, or if you're interested in traveling to check out to see what we do in person. Thursday night, we're back with our Thursday night program, Thursday, October 2nd. This is our Greatest Generation Live program, and we're going to have Lisa Rogak on. She is the author of Propaganda Girls, The Secret War of Women in the OSS. It is really a compelling book. Glenn will be hosting this program. I'll be on with him, and we'll be hearing about the 4 women that Lisa Rogak has profiled in her. Well, I don't know if it's a bestseller, but it's pretty darn close if it's not a bestseller. She profiles 4 women in the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, the intelligence agency during World War II that was a precursor to the CIA. She profiles 4 fascinating women, one of whom is Marlene Dietrich, who is a famous movie star. She was in the OSS during World War II, and Lisa Rogak has captured their story. So please join us again Thursday night, October 2nd at 7 p.m. Eastern, if you can. And then we follow up, of course, every Monday night. This will be next Monday. We have Veteran Open Conversation, and that'll be Monday, October 6th. So that's what we have coming up. Join us if you can. But let's get back to John. John, tell us about how you why you joined the Marines in 1966.
I came from a military family. My father was a P-51 Mustang pilot in China, Burma, and India, in the 528th Squadron of the 14th Air Force, as I believe. And it was just assumed that all males in the family, I was the only male, I had 3 sisters, but all males would join some branch of the military. I was interested in flying, but I did not have 20/20 uncorrected vision, so the Marine Corps would not talk to me. The Army would, to be a CWO as a helicopter pilot, but the thing is, I had grown up and I had seen a few Marines, and I just can't ever really remember not wanting to be a Marine. So went to the recruiting station, and the recruiter said, well, he said, we've got, I was talking about programs. He said, we've got a 2-year, 3-year, and 4-year program. I said, well, what do you get if you do 4 years? He said, oh, just about anything you want as long as you qualify for it. I said, well, what do you got for 3 years? He said, well, we could do many things, but not necessarily what you want. I said, what do you get for 2 years? And he said, well, there's you have no choice. You just do whatever the Marine Corps tells you. I said, fair enough. I said, well, what is the John Wayne thing? What is that? And he said, oh, that'd be a grunt. That'd be an 03. And I said, okay, that's what I want to do. And so I signed on a 3-year contract, went to Vietnam, and just a few days prior to having 2 years total service, I retired as a sergeant, an E5 from the Marine Corps. And, nowadays that's just almost unheard of, but you got to understand that the Marine Corps was just growing enormously at that period of time. So it would be kind of like the gunny would look around and say, well, you're doing okay, you're doing okay, so we'll promote you. And but speaking of promotions, one of the more interesting stories, because I've told you I've been wounded 3 times. The first time I was I arrived in country as a new PFC. I was promoted to Lance Corporal the first time. The second time I was wounded, I got promoted to Corporal. And the third wound, I got promoted to Sergeant. And I got to thinking, okay, there's a relationship here.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. How many more times do I have to be promoted to make gunnery sergeant?
Right.
So I will never be completely happy in life, because my overall goal was to be a gunnery sergeant of Marines, and that never happened.
And that never happened. And it never happened because you were medically retired from the Marine Corps
Yes.
because you got wounded 3 times. If you don't mind, that's 3 Purple Hearts. Could you walk us through each episode? The first one, you were shot in the chest.
Yes, shot right through here. It went through my lung and exited my back. And what happened is, well, it's a longer story, but because of that, I was wearing my flak jacket. We were at a place which I know now to be Gonai Island, which is due east of Fulak 6, and I was like all good Marines. I had my flak jacket zipped up, my helmet on, and when I was hit, it imploded those fibers from the flak jacket into my lung. So if I'd been wearing a T-shirt, it'd have made a nice, neat, clean wound, because it went between 2 ribs and exited between 2 ribs. But because I was wearing the flak jacket, those particles peppered my lung, and they had to take most of it out. So.
Oh boy. And so you recover from that and you go back into action?
That's what happened. It's not quite as honorable as it sounds, because they had us laying out on the deck. It was called Charlie Med at the hospital at Da Nang. And when I entered, it was Charlie Med. When I left, it was First Medical Battalion something. They had renamed it. I was in intensive care for 23 days, not because I really needed intensive care, but because it was a very clean environment, and they wanted to make sure that I didn't get infected. So after my 23 days of intensive care, they put me over in rehab. Rehab to them and me, and I see the purpose now. I did not then, but they would have you, even if you're still on IVs, at 06 in the morning, they'd sound reveille, and you'd get out and they'd bring the swabs and brooms and all that, and you'd clean your area. I really appreciate that because it gave you a focus. It gave you something to do, take your mind off of it. At that time, it just looked like harassment to me. So after 3 days of that, I thought, okay, I'm going to break out of here because I knew that if I would asked any doctor, they would never say, okay, yeah, you can go back to your unit. So, but they between that time, they had us all out on stretchers to go aboard the USS Repose, a hospital ship, and the hospital ship left without us because a big monsoon came in and they could not fly. So that's when I started changing my strategy. So I thought, well, okay. I was looking around. I found a pair of sateen trousers that didn't belong to me, a pair of boots that didn't belong to me, no socks. I could not find a utility jacket, so I neatly tucked in my blue hospital gown and into my trousers, and I literally walked out of the hospital. Now, the smartest thing I did on that is that I took all my records with me. So, and because they really needed the hospital beds, and I didn't need to be in them. So I basically hitchhiked. Some army driver in a Jeep flagged him down, and he said, "Where you need to go?" And I said, "To the Marine Air Station in Da Nang." He said, "Yeah, it's right down the road, no problem." So we got there. I went to the corporal that was in charge of manifest, and and the interesting thing about all of it, no one ever questioned me. No one ever questioned me at all. So I walk in and I tell him where I want to go, and he said, "And why?" He said, "Well, we don't have anything going today, but day after tomorrow we can put you on the milk run," and without any ID or anything, because, well, it was obviously I wasn't VC or Viet Cong. So anyway, I said, "Well, can I stay here for the night?" He said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And they had big cases of sea rations off to the side. And so I said, can I eat?" He said, "Yeah, just clean up your mess when you finish." So I stayed there for a day plus, waiting for the milk run, as they called it. Flew back to Anwa, where the bulk of the battalion was. Found that Lieutenant William L. Buchanan, my platoon commander, was actually at Nong Son, the coal mines, and he was on the second band of the hill. So I took an Amtrak with supplies and all that to get there, and I knocked on his hooch, and hooch is not a good description. It was some of the railroad ties from the light railroad for the coal mines themselves was there, and they had a poncho over it and all that. So I looked around and thought, well, here's some wooden tracks. It'll make a noise. So I knocked on it and I said, "Sir, PFC Bates reporting for duty." There was a long pause, and he finally said, "Bates, get in here." And he had no idea whether I'd lived or died. I mean, we had some horrific combat that I was on the very front end that didn't last, that lasted all the way through Christmas. But I said, "Sir, I understand you need trigger pullers." He said, "I do." I said, "Well, I can't hump yet because I'm still spitting up blood. But that being the case, I can stand perimeter guard." And he said, "Okay, that's fair enough." So I did perimeter guard duty until we got back to Anwa, and then I did perimeter guard duty until I was well enough to hump again.
Colonel, there's something called $1 million wound. And some, maybe Army soldiers in the past have kind of dreamed of one, have been relieved to have gotten one. That is, a wound where it's serious enough to get you out of action and get you back home, but it's not going to kill you or maim you or disable you permanently in too bad a way. You got something close to $1 million wound, although I get the sense that it has impacted your whole life and disabled you in some ways. Do you not understand the whole concept of $1 million wound? I mean,
Yes.
there you had it, but you, and then Brad Washabaugh, who's a retired Marine colonel, he understands this. You elected to go back to your unit even though you were spitting up blood. I think a lot of us would have a hard time understanding that logic.
My choices were to remain in rehab at First Medical Battalion Hospital or join a company, and it narrowed down to that. And there was no doubt in my mind that I was getting better faster, so that made the decision pretty easy, pretty quick.
And I don't want you to interrupt, Todd, but like I feel like even just elected to go back is putting it lightly. Like through sheer will, you're just like, I'm gonna pick myself up and take myself there. I'm gonna put myself in front of the command and say, I'm here, put me in front or put me back.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Here am I, Lord, send me.
Yeah. Brad Washabaugh, do you understand this?
I certainly do. Hello, John. Sir, how you doing? I was on the East Coast when you retired in 2005. You stayed on, I think, 10 years longer than me. I got out early at 29. I didn't like the chow anymore. So
good to see you, Colonel.
Yeah, I think you were the chief of staff out there at base at Camp Pendleton.
Yeah.
I was the CO of the School of Infantry on the East Coast. So I wish I would have gotten known you on active duty. I looked at the video today that you have on your wounds, and I was just taken back by your dedication and your service and bravery. And it's such an honor to have you on tonight with your son. And Colonel Mike Phelan is down there in the corner too, headset on. He's another distinguished Marine. And usually I have to hold Todd honest on making Marine jokes, but I know he dare not make any jokes tonight. It takes one to outnumber him, of course, but now we got a whole team around him. So I think we're in good company here. And thank you for being on with us tonight, you and your son and others. This is a great opportunity to hear from somebody who's made a big mark on the Marine Corps. And your story certainly exemplifies the core values of honor, courage, and commitment for the Marine Corps. So, sir, it's good to have you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The night is young, Brad, when it comes to Marine jokes. We do have we have several Marines on tonight with us, one of whom is Andy Niggett. Andy served in your company, Gulf Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. I had thought that you guys served together, but you didn't. You were out. Andy entered the company when he came to Vietnam in July 1968. Then he was wounded October 9th, 1968. So you were gone by then. You were in fact out of the Marine Corps by then.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask how much time was there between that first serious wound, being shot in the chest, and the second one?
I was shot through the chest on 17 December 1966. I was wounded with grenade shrapnel up the side of my left leg, and on 6 July 1967.
Oh, okay.
And then a few weeks later, on 15 August, is when I stepped on a punji stake into a punji stake trap and perforated my foot. And it was interesting because there were supposedly a lot of punji stake traps throughout the areas that we worked, but I had never. The only time I'd ever seen one was in staging battalion on getting ready to go on the way to Vietnam, and that was a Vietnamese mock-up village. And so I had never actually seen one until I saw it up close and personal.
And it's funny, for all the years I've been talking with veterans, I've certainly have heard much about punji sticks and the booby traps, but I don't know if I've ever met anyone who was wounded by one in the way that you were. I mean, you were wounded in the most gruesome, not the most gruesome, but in a pretty darn gruesome way. that you kind of would see about in a training film. It was truly a punji stick tipped with feces stuck through your boot, stuck through your foot.
Well, I assume that it was they used water buffalo manure on it, but I really don't know that. Um, but the incident that led up to it is that we were on patrol, and at that point in time, I thought, maybe by chance I might actually live and get out of Vietnam. I was beginning to think kind of positively. But we had Mr. Bai and Mr. Dow, our two Vietnamese interpreters, they were Kit Carson scouts that were leading us, and we started taking incoming, and it was a real grassy area, and then it would clear up, and then it'd be real high grass again, and they the VC or NVA, whoever they were, knew that we were coming, and so they were taking random shots through the grass, and we'd hear they were very non-directed, so we'd hear them coming over the overhead, and the Mr. Bai, Mr. Dow, uh, good scouts, started running towards the gunfire, as did I, and then all of a sudden, it was just in a split moment. I thought, "Oh, damn, that is a punji steak," because I stepped on it, and the weather had bowed it a little bit, and as soon as I took that step and didn't stop falling, I realized that it was not going to be a good day. Yep.
Thank
Yep.
you,
Yep.
Chase Paulus.
That's
We have a
that's pretty close to where
yeah,
where I
yeah.
on the foot where I got mine.
And the person who shared this in the chat is Chase Polis, who's I believe, a high school student who's on the program listening to this, and he came up with this image. Yeah, this is pretty much where you got it. And is a odd question, but do you just pull your foot off of it? Do you pull it out of your foot? How did that work?
I've been asked that question 100 times, and I still have no clue. My last memories of that was going down on it and not feeling any pain immediately, but beginning to feel pain very shortly after that. And then I don't remember anything until I was back at BAS, back at Anwa, where Corpsman Lou Laguerre was he was everybody called him Gunny because he was an E7, and he spent 29 of his 30 years in the Navy as a corpsman with the Marine Corps. So he'd never wear the petty officer rank. He always wore a gunnery sergeant chevron, and that's when it really confused me. When I went back and he was working on me, and he was a gruff sucker, and he would say, hold on, this is gonna hurt, but not like it's going to later, or stuff like that. Just screwing around. But anyway, I don't even remember how I was medevaced at all. I just simply don't remember. And went back to him. He cleaned it out, sewed it up, and I did have problems with it for probably another year and a half, maybe 2 years.
So it really wouldn't heal.
It wouldn't heal completely, and I got infection underneath the exit wound itself. So they'd have to ride it, or whatever they call it, rinse it all out, and start over. So as far as pain goes, it was worse than the gunshot wound, even though the gunshot wound was very life-threatening, and that was not.
So the rule was, right, in the Marine Corps, and I assume in the other branches of service, 3 Purple Hearts, maybe it's just the Marine Corps, 3 Purple Hearts, you're out. You're back home.
That was more than service wide. That was a national policy.
Okay.
If you were wounded 3 times, you immediately start the process of the admin process of mustering out back to the States.
Okay. So because of that, you started mustering out back to the States with that punji stick. You didn't try to escape that time. You
No,
surrendered to the idea of going back to the States.
Now they put me on perimeter duty, which was, perimeter duty is always there. So at least I could serve, but I don't recall going on any more patrols
Okay.
until I got out of there. Mostly because I couldn't, because every time I'd step, it would split it open and start over.
So I'm looking at Sean. Sean, what were they doing putting you on perimeter duty? You should have just been in a hospital than at home.
No, I could function on perimeter duty. I just couldn't really walk. Just
You Marine.
hobble out and get in the
I
hall and
I could
watch
function. I
them
just
leave.
couldn't walk. I hope everybody heard that sentence. Um, you guys, you Marines, it's unbelievable to me that kind of devotion to duty. And this is what Sean put in the chat. You know, where does that come from? Do you think that's trained that that's drilled into you in boot camp? Is it something you're born with? Is it something the Marine Corps infuses in you?
Well, I've heard it called the Marine Corps is a cult, and it actually is, but it's a cult in a very good way. And yeah, in the Marine Corps, either you love it or you hate it.
Yeah.
And the only time I've ever really been pissed with the Marine Corps is when they retired me the first time, and when they retired me the second time, because the second time I knew I still had another good 10 years left in me. But they said, no, you're an old guy. You got to go. You got to go home. And I said, well, no, where's home? They said, well, you better start thinking because we got a couple of months and then you're out.
You got to make a new home. So tell us about
Yeah,
that
yeah.
first time that they medically retired you. This is you get back home, you get back to the US. Why did they retire you?
7.5 years. So I was retired for 7.5 years. I started really diligently trying to get back in after about 4.5 or 5 years. And of course, this was the days long before computers, but I would submit my package. And because by that time I'd used the GI Bill, not a smart guy, but smart enough to do that. So I would send my package in. Headquarters of Marine Corps would actually approve it, but they would send it to Bureau of Medicine, who handles all it, and they'd look at it and say, well, this guy looks like a train wreck. He would never last. So they'd put denied on the cover sheet, send it back to me through the Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps saying, well, we can't help you because BuMed says no, and they hold the cards. Well, um, what I would do, I'd peel off the cover sheet, nice, new, clean cover sheet. I'd peel off the back couple of sheets that had my education all on it because I was still going to school and I ended up with a couple of masters, just mostly because I thought it would help get back in the Marine Corps. Well, I finally wore them down because I had the package in between the clean cover sheets was all rolled at the bottom. I had coffee ring stains on it and all that. And I deliberately I didn't certainly didn't have a computer, but I did have an electric typewriter, and I got to where I could type fairly proficiently. So it finally worked. There's some GS3 somebody that does all that, and he kept thinking, well, I don't know who this Bates guy is, but I'm tired of fooling with him. So let's let him go to OCS. He'll fail, and then we'll be done with him. And the good news is I did go to OCS, and I did not fail.
And that was it. So just to make the timeline clear, the Marine Corps medically discharges you or retires you in 1968?
68, that's correct.
68
Ju- Just,
because
yeah, just a few days short of my 2 year active duty time on a 3 year contract.
so you get retired short of 2 years. Wow, in Marine Corps, medically
Mhm.
retired. And they do it because you're just a mess. You've been wounded 3 times and you're at this bad foot and you're not you can no longer function. Did you get retired kicking and screaming and try to
Yes,
stay in? Yes, okay. And then
yes,
and then the campaigns.
because
Okay.
I realized I'd never make my goal as a gunnery sergeant if I couldn't get back in, because I was willing to come back in as a sergeant. In fact, I'd even come back in as a PFC if they'd let me, but that was not an option.
And so you go to OCS, and OCS is no picnic. It's not.
Uh,
You're older. You're
yeah, I was a 30-year-old second lieutenant.
yeah. That's old.
Yeah, now it seems mighty young to me now.
Right, right. But the Marine Corps tends to be a young man's game, and there you are at OCS at 30 years old. Um, and what did you do from there after you graduated OCS?
My first job after I was commissioned, I was a platoon commander in Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, and they were based out of Camp Pendleton then. Now that's where a good lead in for Josh, because Josh, your first.
Yeah, my first platoon command was also in Charlie in Suicide Charlie 1-7. So that was cool, kind of a cool full circle moment.
And so,
of course, none of it was planned.
None of it was planned. It's just how it was.
And just how it happened.
Yeah. Right, right. So you end up serving in Desert Storm. You end up serving in Iraq. The two of you ended up actually overlapping in Iraq, correct?
Yeah, and you want to take that?
We did, yeah. So actually, I was in Weapons Company 1-7, was a captain commander. After we pushed through Baghdad, we went back down south to Najaf, and Pops was on the division staff, I think, at the time. In some billet that I'm convinced he just made up to get in country, but however it worked, he was there. So he actually came down one time to Najaf, and then he needed a ride back to Babylon, where the division headquarters was. Again, this is back in the Wild West days, still 2003 OF1, just a couple weeks after the invasion, and kind of settled down. And so just hopped in the back of the gun truck that I was driving, as an officer. Again, kind of a no-no, but with a couple of the machine gunners in the back, and we drove the hour and a half or whatever it was back to Babylon, dropped them off, turned back, went back.
How great.
We suffered a pretty ugly sandstorm in the meantime, so I gave us some really tight father-son time while we're in probably a grade school or something like that.
There was like a technical university in Najaf that had been abandoned. That's kind of where we kind of reached up there. But
you rode out the storm.
Yeah.
So there's a book or a movie in that alone.
I was a little, I was kind of hoping we were going to take some contact on the way back up, because Najaf was like fairly pacified by that point. We'd shot a bunch of people when we first got down there, and when we left Baghdad, and then it kind of calmed down at that point. But I thought that would have been fun, for some father-son trigger time. But yeah, it didn't happen. So probably for the better.
Father-son trigger time. Nothing like father-son trigger time.
Real quick question, because due to John's injuries in Vietnam, Josh, were you ever, as a kid, allowed to complain about anything?
Yeah, good question.
It was not. It was discouraged. Put that.
Yeah, I whined like a baby when I got a splinter the other day working in my yard, and yeah, I could imagine not doing that if you were my father there, John.
Although I think the one other fun father-son story from that time, I think we're the only ones that I know that have both fragged ourselves with hand grenades.
What?
I ended up doing the same thing up in Baghdad earlier in that deployment, and Pops had done the same in Vietnam. So that's
Tell us what happened. What happened there?
No, ours was doing a hasty clearance real quick, we were getting ambushed, but there was a bunch of unexploded DPICM on the ground, and usually the assaultmen already had like their little charges of the Comp B already set up. We had already run out of all that, so then it was just drop hand grenades next to them to sympathetic detonate, and the first three were successful. The fourth one I didn't run fast enough and got tagged.
And you did get hit.
From my own grenade.
And pardon my ignorance, I'm not a veteran. Does that count for Purple Heart or anything?
No, not at all. It
All
was
right.
just it counted for my Marines to like,
Yeah.
have some pretty hilarious
Yeah.
at skit night. They reenacted that one quite a few times.
Can you tell us, Josh, about were you part of the invasion force in March 2003?
I was, yep. So actually, 1-7, on the very first day of the war, we were kind of the lead element for the MEF as we went up to secure was a gas oil separation platform in Azerbaijan, which is just west of Basra. So at that point, that we called it the opening gambit. We were kind of tip of the spear on that one for the first, I guess, 24 hours or whatever. And then we linked up with the main, uh, the march up as they called it, and all the way up to Baghdad.
And Josh, was that your first experience of combat?
It was, yeah, yeah. So I was a first lieutenant. I had just moved into weapons company, following a deployment before that. But yeah, that was my first combat deployment.
And was it what you expected? I mean, you have at this point, you have a long history in your family, your grandfather, your father with combat stories. You understand what war is, I think, better than probably most young people. But was it still kind of new and surprising to you?
I mean, it was, but I would say the Marine Corps does a really good job of training you for it. So
Yeah.
I thought I was pretty well prepared in that respect. And we always talk about how like no plan survives first contact. Well,
Yeah.
ours actually did for about 12 or 14 hours, which had to be a record, right? Like
Yeah.
everything was like action. I mean, we were we got engaged and we were in combat. We were taking fire, but like that whole first day kind of went according to plan, which was shocking. And we didn't take any casualties that day either. So that was good.
I want to share with people this book that you wrote, and that just actually came out just a couple months ago in May. I'm scrolling through here and I want to show people the cover because it's such a striking. Oh, here it is. It's such a striking cover, I think. It's called The Baghdad Shuffle, and I think it's a really cool cover. And I'm going to ask you first about, yeah, I love books and I love how they're constructed, how they're designed. I have great admiration for the artistic geniuses who design great book covers. And this is really a striking one. I'm going to show people. It's not quite what you'd expect. I mean, it is a work of fiction, but it's based entirely on that kind of first few months, correct, of your experience in Iraq in 2003.
It is, yeah. So like the first act all takes place in Iraq, and that's probably about 90 to 95% all events that actually happened that were just dramatized, obviously for the book, and then had to monkey with the chronology a little bit to make the narrative flow a little
Right,
better.
right.
But yeah, and then it's a crime story kind of wrapped with all the trappings of like a military thriller. So then after that, it goes back to California, and then actually down to Mexico. And those parts are obviously much more. I mean, some of that is based on things I experienced before the Marine Corps, but those are obviously much more fictionalized. But
Is it is
the whole first act that takes place in Baghdad is very much drawn from stuff that I experienced firsthand.
is this you?
On the cover, actually, it is. Yeah, and that is kind of a weird story. Like, so in the second chapter of Baghdad Shuffle, there's a bank heist, and it was essentially a lot of regime money that was left behind that Saddam and crew weren't able to like get out. Some of the hard currency they weren't able to get out of there. I didn't know this at the time. We were just on patrol. We got word that hey, these guys are knocking over a bank in downtown Baghdad. Go stop them. So we went out there and did. And then right after that, as we were trying to kind of police up the area, I think this was either like a French or a Dutch TV crew was just like rolling through the streets, and one of them took this photo. And so when Double Dagger, my publishing company, was asking me kind of for ideas for the cover design, I said, well, I have some photos from Iraq. Some of them are better resolution than others, and kind of work through it. And then they liked this one, so I was like, okay, yeah, we can throw it on there.
That is a good one. It is a good one. Let me read the description here, and I will also put the link to Amazon if that's your preferred link. Let me read the description because I do think it's well written description and it's engaging, and I just want to ask if it captures your own sense of what Baghdad was like in 2003. Iraq 2003. Baghdad has fallen. Saddam is on the run. A cabal of deposed Iraqi officials scramble to move millions in illicit cash out of the country to finance new beginnings abroad. U.S. Marine Jim Wild stumbles onto their money trail and uncovers a lethal plot connected to Baghdad, Los Angeles, and the wilds of Baja, with a desperate web of Iraqi intelligence operatives, Corsican gangsters, Mexican outlaws, CIA officers, and U.S. law enforcement agents. Is that any of that based in reality?
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff early on, one of the central characters is a character named Fouad, who is an Iraqi intelligence officer who kind of approaches the protagonist in the book kind of off the street, right? And that whole very first scene is based on a real guy. So we were actually it was a Catholic church slash hospital where some nuns were treating the locals, and these guys rolled up that were in really bad shape. They've been shot up, and the nuns wouldn't treat them. I thought, oh, that's okay, that's unusual. If you're not getting
Yeah.
medical service from a nun, you're obviously like a pretty bad dude. And then this Iraqi guy, like out of nowhere, just kind of like wanders up. I have still to this day, looking back on it, I wasn't until I later on in my career, I transitioned to human intelligence, counterintelligence. At the time, I was just dumb grunt. I didn't know anything. This guy, looking back on it now, it makes a lot more sense. But this guy came up and introduced himself and say, "Hey, there's another hospital down the road. I can take him down." And we're thinking, okay, this guy's leading us to some ambush or something. This doesn't smell right. But also just leaving these guys to bleed out on the steps of the church probably wasn't a good look, for the newly liberated Baghdad. So we got him out there and followed this guy down. And then I just would randomly through the next couple of weeks in Baghdad, he would just appear, right? So looking back on it again, he was gaming us, but like at the time I didn't know that. But he did tip off to a few weapons caches, a couple of guys he probably had blood feuds with, or his black market competition he was trying to clean out,
Rub out.
And so that was kind of the genesis for that character, and just the whole aspect of like how lawless those environments are, right, during war. It's a very fertile ground for like bigger criminal capers to kind of take place. And so I was intrigued by that kind of narrative theme, and that's what that was the genesis behind the book.
I mean, it was the Wild West. That's just what it sounds like. It was, and you were keeping the lid on, or Marines and other forces were keeping the lid on this.
Trying to, yeah. As we said, it was all bad dudes and blood feuds. So there was a lot of revenge killings, just a lot of opportunism, run amok. People trying to, they're trying to get theirs.
John, what was your role when you were in Iraq in 2003?
As Josh mentioned, I kind of had to sort of make up the role. I was the assistant chief of staff for operations and training at Camp Pendleton, a very non-deployable job. And when I found that our son and his new wife were on their way to Iraq, I thought, okay, I got to figure this out, because there's no way I'm going to stay and watch the news every night and from the States. So I went to the CG and I said, "Sir, I'm going to Iraq." And he kind of jumped back and he thought, he said, "Why and how and what are you going to do?" I said, I said, "You got to understand, my son and daughter-in-law are there. So that being the case, I've got to be there." Well, then General Conway, the commanding general of First Marine Division, I had worked for him. I was the ops officer for the basic school back when I was a major, and I had a good rapport with him. And so I called him. I said, "Sir, I'm going to Iraq, and I really don't have a job. So could I work for you?" And there was a pause, and he said, "Yeah." He said, I think I can find you something." So I became the liaison. Most of the time, I was working out of where Fifth Fleet is headquartered, Bahrain. But I was going back and forth, carrying, basically a satchel of notes from some of the other commanders and all that needed personal care. So I actually pulled it off. So it worked well, And the good news is we're here having this conversation with you. So it worked out well.
Something tells me, John, that if you wanted to pull off flying an F-15 right now, that you could do it. But my ears absolutely perked up when you said my son and daughter-in-law were in Iraq, and I
Yeah.
wasn't aware of this part of the story. Josh, how did that happen?
It's a honeymoon, right? You
Yeah,
got a
so-
new wife.
Honeymoon.
So yeah, just for clarification, that's actually my ex-wife.
Okay.
But yeah, she was a Marine intel officer with VMU with the UAV squadron. So she got deployed over there as well. And we'd only been married 6 months or something at this point, I think. And yeah, 1-7 we took off first, got to Kuwait, and then they came in later, and yeah, she was there for the big dance.
So I got a chance to see them both.
So my mom was pissed, obviously, that now
She was left out.
son, husband, and daughter-in-law were all gone at the same time. Yeah.
This is your book, Josh. This is a family reunion in a war zone.
And let me jump in and ask, and I do want to invite people to raise their hands, ask questions, make comments, connect with these two remarkable people who are clearly, I would say I'd say you're both probably adrenaline junkies. Would that be accurate?
I think Pop's maybe more
Okay.
so than me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's true. If you can sit and write, you don't need that shot of adrenaline. You, however, John, you like to jump out of airplanes a lot.
I do, but I haven't jumped since Saturday, so it's been been almost 2 days.
So you're itching for it. Yeah, I do want to invite people to ask questions, make comments. But John, I want to, and this is a serious question. Why don't you write your memoir? It's really a remarkable story. It's a remarkable career. You have wonderful perspective. You have a wonderful sense of humor, a very good memory. And I just think this would be a really good story that people would be interested and other generations would learn a lot from.
Well, seeing that Josh has had success with the book, and what I did, I was the Fleet Marine officer for Second Fleet, based out of Norfolk, Virginia. But before I got the word, I was required to go to Seventh Fleet and be the Fleet Marine officer there. It's just not good to have the same job in two different areas.
Yeah.
But under the circumstances, I understand. Oh, geez, what were we just talking about?
about writing the memoir.
About writing your book.
While I was at Second Fleet, we did not deploy much at all. Of the 2 years I was there, maybe twice a year, so maybe 4 times we actually set sail on the USS Mount Whitney. Now, what happened is I was overwhelmed with downtime, and I'm not used to that. I had lots of time on my hands. The Marines, could only do PT for so long and only go to the chow hall so many times and all that. And so I really, for the first time in my life, I did have some downtime. So I started writing notes because an eye doctor from Little Rock, Arkansas, where I was born and reared, had on the side become kind of he wrote kind of for movies that never really made it. But I started that, and so I've got lots of notes, but I've got lots of blank spaces and lots of things that have happened that I thought happened at a certain date and found that they happened, but not at that time.
Right.
So I need to sit down and seriously clean it up. But my whole purpose for doing that was to pass it on down to Josh.
Yes.
I have no ambitions of at this point of doing anything more, unless I find myself permanently injured, and then I'd have lots of downtime.
Yeah. And
But the
hopefully
source material is there. We have
Yeah.
that captured. That part's good.
that's good. Hey, Sean.
Josh, I make light of sort of growing up and scrubbing, hitting your knee or something, but complaining. But you hear when did you start to hear your dad's stories, and when did those start to become a part of it in a way your identity too, of like this desire to serve and following in those footsteps. Uh, did that happen early on for
Yeah,
you or a little later?
yeah, it was pretty early on. I mean, because Pops was already back in the Corps by the time I was born, so he'd gotten commissioned, and he and Mom had already been probably second duty station or something by the time I was into the first duty. Yeah. So yeah, I was raised in it, right? So there was, and back then there were still enough of those guys from that generation that they had served with them in Vietnam, and actually he was talking about William Buchanan, his platoon commander. They lost touch after Vietnam, and then had a very fortuitous kind of reunion up in the San Francisco Bay Area. Bill went on to become an FBI agent, was stationed at the field office up there. They both thought each other had been killed in the war. And then back in '86, and I think it was after like Platoon or like one of the Oliver Stone movies came out or something like that. And then it was like a editorial in the San Francisco newspaper. Like, wait a second, Bill Buchanan, like I know that guy. And then we're able to read. So like through people like that, that's when I started to really. So by this time I'm like 8, 9, 10 years old. That now I'm starting to like kind of hear from the folks that were actually there. Kind of more the more like detailed, like unedited versions, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Josh, you let me know, which I didn't realize, that every Marine who gets out of service at the rank of 06 and above is required to sit for an interview at the
Yeah.
National Museum of the United States Marine Corps, correct?
Well, it's actually History Division, which is over at Marine Corps University on Quantico. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if the Marine Corps order. In the interim, I tried to actually look up to see if the order, they may have rescinded it, but it's still highly encouraged, and it's not something that you have to do in person. They actually have a whole on the History Division website. There's a whole like how-to guide where you basically film your own.
Yeah.
They have some kind of like stock questions and stuff you go through and kind of give your entire service chronology there. Because like I say, now they have the technology to like digitally ingest a lot of those, and
Yes.
can make them available in the archives for researchers and whatnot very, very quickly. But yeah, it used to be like a no kidding Marine Corps order that like anybody that retired 06 and higher, and I think E9s were all supposed to sit for oral history interviews, either telephonically or in person if they could make it. But there was no funding to like ship people back there and stuff, so that was why I don't think it happened. It wasn't as adhered to.
Right. It sounds like a wonderful idea, though. Colonel Washabaugh, did you do that?
No, it's interesting. I have not heard that, but I'll certainly look into it. And it's fascinating. A lot of history when you cover, a career of a senior enlisted or an officer that has as many years in as John and others do. John, I got to ask you a question now. How many marathons have you run? And ultra
Here we go.
I've run 52 marathons and about a dozen ultras. Ultras are designed or defined
Right.
as anything longer than a marathon. So I just happened to check my phone as we were coming on, and Ted Steinhauser, shout out to you, buddy, because we were running mates here, and we did the Circle Island run and all that. But in fact, actually, he's probably run more marathons and ultra distance than I have. But 52 marathons, and I did Death Valley, Mount Whitney, which was the longest run I've ever made. And that worked out to where that I was with Max Hooper, a former schoolmate, and we ended up being co-holders of the American record.
Wow.
From the bottom of Death Valley, which is 282 feet below sea level, to the top of Mount Whitney, which is 14,464 feet above sea level. We did it in 63 hours and 12 minutes.
Wow. Well, I've been searching my mind trying to find one thing maybe I did as equal or maybe better to you, John, and I could only come up with one thing. And what
What's
year
that?
did you run your first marathon?
My first marathon was the second Marine Corps marathon that was ever produced, and I just knew that I would come close to breaking 3 hours. Well, I ended up I think it was something like 3:13 or something like that. disgusting run for me myself. But you know what got me into running to begin with was because I ran 2 years of track in high school, and I played 2 years of football. I did not letter in anything, but it came from a very competitive high school. So, but I knew about running and about hydration and all that. So I started working out when I first saw the first glimpse of the possibility that I might be accepted back in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
I started running and just never stopped.
Well, I think a lot of people that endurance athletes that have gone through trauma like you have run to overcome and prove. And I ran the first Marine Corps marathon in 1976.
Okay, and mine was in '77.
That's the only thing I can come up with. The rest of it, I'm just humbled by your accomplishments. And we'll see you at the start line for the 50th Marine Corps Marathon. That's where I'm going to be this year.
My running career stopped about 8 or 10 years ago, and it was one I was actually running up the hill to this house, and I just thought, you know, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
So little at a time. I'm in my 80th year of life, and I do not like it, but pieces of my abilities and all that are just falling off the wagon. So.
You're doing real good, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Brad. I mean, you know, punji stick in the foot running
I know.
marathons. I mean,
can't, yeah.
you're not going to compete with that. I'm sorry.
No. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thanks, Todd. Thanks,
Just wanted to clarify. Chase Polos, how are you?
I'm doing good. I just had a question. During your time in Vietnam, did you hear stories about the Navy construction guys working on airfields? Did you ever meet any?
I met a number of CBs, but I'm not really familiar with that construction company.
Yeah,
but I'm sure
CBs.
there are lots of them.
Who are you referring to, Chase?
The CBs.
Oh, the CBs.
There was
why,
Oh,
I'm
why are
a
you
couple
asking?
guys in my reenactment group
Okay.
were served in
yeah.
Vietnam and they were CBs. And there's a story.
In fact,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. In fact, when we got to Anhua, well, what happened is I joined the battalion when they were at Dong Ha for Operation Prairie 2. And but I mean, I was just literally fresh off the boat. So and being so junior in rank, and there was a lot of stuff happening, but I was not involved with it. Because of my rank, they sent me to Chu Lai to get the LSD Idel County, the USS Idel County.
Mhm.
And we got the ship ready for the battalion to board and go to Da Nang. So yeah, but the CBs, I did meet a lot of them, and especially at Anhua, because Anhua wasn't even really a complete airstrip until we got there.
Speaking of airstrips, there was a story that one of the reenactors in my group that served in Vietnam was. So the CBs got all their construction gear, they got all the tractors and whatnot, and they started working on the airfield. The first thing they built was a bar. Then they ordered a whole drum of rum from the ARVN in town.
Chase, did I hear you say that you're a member of a Vietnam reenactment group?
No, I do World War II reenacting, but
Okay.
a lot of the guys, some of the chief petty officers, they were CBs over in Vietnam.
Okay. How interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of respect for those.
Yes, absolutely. Anybody else? Did somebody else have a question here or a comment? I'm looking.
Beth Rushel said, does he still hold the record for the 146-mile run in
Yes.
Death Valley?
Do you still hold the record, the American?
No. That was broken, but there will never be an official race, or I don't believe there'll ever be an official race from the bottom of Death Valley to the top of Mount Whitney anymore. The Park Service wrongfully blamed the runners for trashing the trail, and we had spotters and all that to make sure that we didn't leave anything on there. But they closed it. Our record was beat the following year, and I can't even remember now who beat us. But anyway, that's now you can run to the Whitney Portal, which is 11 miles from the top, and that's as far as the official race will probably ever go. But the last 11 miles, you cannot run an organized race.
John, I would, after so long with your connection with the Marine Corps, when you were retired the second time in 2005, how did you transition to a life outside the Marine Corps? I know that you did a really interesting job afterwards. It's probably several interesting jobs. One of them that I do know about at Pearl Harbor. But how was that transition for you?
Well, the idea of leaving the Marine Corps was very distasteful to me because again, like I say, I know I could have served another 10 years, but they chose not to let a 60-year-old continue to be 70 on active duty. So my first job was with Patrick T. Brent, a Marine who came from nothing, has made tons of money now, who had the Pearl Harbor Visitor Center. He made me the chief operating officer, so did that, and the most interesting part of that were the people I would meet. Every day, somebody would come up and say, well, my father, my grandfather, my uncle, whatever, served either on the USS Arizona or here in the Pearl Harbor area. And there's so many stories that I wish that we had documented now. But that's the way it was. But that was a really good job. Following that, I was the executive director for the Armed Services YMCA. I did that for 3 years, and then Stephanie, my wife, Josh's mom, we decided we still got our health, so why don't we, pull chocks and travel and just see the world again.
How did Stephanie deal with uh, being in the Marine Corps family? I mean, it's tough to have a husband in the Marine Corps. It's tougher, I think, to have a husband and a son, and then later a daughter-in-law in the Marine Corps. Or I mean, and she was Navy, but being deployed, being sent around the world.
Yeah, well, Stephanie kind of grew up in an environment. Her father was for Missouri Pacific Railroad, which has no longer been taken by Union Pacific Railroad. Her father was a structural engineer, and he would go design bridges and trestles and all that for the railroad. And then, so that meant that every 2 years or so, they would pack up and leave again. So she ended up having to move her senior year of high school.
Right.
So when we lived in this house for 3.5 years, it was the longest she had ever spent in any one place.
Oh, wow.
So she came by. We moved 23 times in 33 years. So that she's used to it. But it's not easy, but
No.
she does it well.
Isn't that amazing? And how about you, Josh? How about when you got out of the Marines? How was your transition?
My transition was pretty easy, to be honest. Like I say, here on Oahu, like in Hawaii, like there's a pretty strong like veteran community to begin with. So there's a lot of resources there to kind of help you through it. And like I said, I went right back to school on GI Bill. And it was in a program that was, filled with like a bunch of folks that were still on active duty, so I kind of joked it was like 13th grade reading for military folks. And yeah, so it was good. It was a good, pretty easy transition. And my current wife, who's a Navy veteran, she retired from the Navy a couple years before I did, so I was able to kind of like poach some of her you
Right.
know, good ideas for like how to get through the process and everything. So,
And what did you get your master's in, and why did you pursue it?
yeah, so diplomacy and military studies, which was it's kind of it's at Hawaii Pacific University. The main reason I liked it is because they teach you a lot of the actual like hard researching skills that you know professional historians need, and they give you a lot of leeway on your thesis. So what you want to study and I had a fairly controversial one that looked at domestic military intelligence operations within the continental United States from 65 to 75,
Yeah.
and then some of the post Church Pike and other congressional reforms that took place after that. And they're very, you know, the school was very helpful. My program director and my thesis advisor and everybody were very helpful in allowing me to do that. And it was something because, yeah, having been a counterintelligence and human intelligence guy later on in my career, it was something that intrigued me. So that was the main reason I went after that program, is because there was a lot of autonomy to kind of study what I wanted to get into.
I would like you, if you could, you're counterintelligence, you were human intelligence, and you did this master's, and it sounds like you had a serious focus in domestic intelligence work that military intelligence was doing and shouldn't have been doing between 1965 and 1975. Could you tell our viewers what that was about? So this was military
Yeah,
intelligence spying on American citizens, right?
yeah, essentially that's what it came down to. And you know, but it wasn't necessarily in violation of the existing legislation at the time, right? So everybody talks about posse comitatus, and it's a very
Right.
misunderstood. In fact, the naval services were not, you know, we had administratively adopted some of that, but if you read the actual legislation up until just I think last year, they were finally you know, naval services were exempt, so the Marine Corps
Right.
included. But yeah, so there was a bunch of loopholes that were exploited, sometimes for good reasons, a lot of times for maybe not so pure intentions.
Right.
But I think it's a good kind of just rudder check, right? Because we look at like kind of the domestic situation now, everybody gets really bent out of shape, but you don't realize like how crazy and how violent things were back then. You know, when you had active duty Army units that were cranking off thousands of like, you know, heavy machine gun rounds in Detroit during the riots in 67 or whatever, you know, or Watts in 65. Like there was a lot of drama. So
Yeah.
it's a kind of it's reassuring in the sense that like, okay, things were actually probably worse, maybe, you know, objectively worse back then. And, you know, the Republic survived. So
And
kind of gives you
Josh,
hope for,
and that's very serious. I agree. I mean, I'm a historian also, and sometimes it sounds really strange, but sometimes I'm almost reassured when I'm reading about the Civil War or when I'm reading
Mhm.
about the late 1960s. Okay, we've had periods of intense polarization, conflict in this country, and we've, gotten through it to the other side. Um,
Right.
are you a full-time writer? Is that what you're doing
I
now?
am now, and again, a full-time fiction writer now too. So I don't do any of the academic history stuff anymore. So all my attention is on was on Baghdad Shuffle, and then now working on both the sequel and prequel, and potentially some screenplay adaptations as well. So
And I was going to say, what's your next book?
so I was only contracted for this one, so I'm waiting to hear back from the publisher whether they want me to go for the sequel or the prequel.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so yeah, so we'll see. I will give them what they want.
I'm going to go with Sean right in a second, but I want to ask you one more question. This is a tough one as an author. Why should people read your book?
You know, I think it captures a very specific moment in time. And I think sometimes fiction can do that without all necessarily like maybe the political baggage or everything else that comes along with actually like, you know, like a pop history,
Yeah.
or, you know, any nonfiction work.
Yeah.
And really it's because, you know, Marines are hilarious creatures. And a
I
lot of
think
the stuff that comes out of
I'm
their
sorry, I'm
mouths
going to
is
interrupt. You and your father are evidence of that. Okay.
yeah. Well, the young guys especially, right? You know, I think and kind of the popular culture is inundated with a lot of like special ops stuff, you know, Navy SEALs and Delta and all, which is awesome. Like those guys are great.
Yep.
But you know, they tend to be like older, more mature, better trained. These are not like the 18-year-old PFCs that I had that joined our unit literally like straight out of School of Infantry, medicine Kuwait. 2 weeks later, they're shooting people. And
Right.
then living out of a gun truck with no showers for like 100 days. I mean, living hard at that age, right? I mean, they're
Right.
like, these guys are still shitting high school chow and they're like in combat now. That's something I really want to kind of highlight, that aspect of it as well, right? So like kind of the platoon dynamics that are they're embedded with the protagonist. I mean, the protagonist he's a cap platoon commander, because that's, you know, right, what you know, that was kind of based on my personal experience. But I really kind of wanted to highlight like the gallows humor, and just the way, like, how tough those Marines were to at that age. Like I say, I thought the Marine Corps done a really good job of training me to be prepared for all that, for all the gore and the death and everything else. But it would have been tougher, you know, if I'd been 18 at the time. I was 25, so it's like that's a pretty critical, you know, transition in kind of like your early manhood and stuff by that point. So that was another thing I just really want to kind of highlight, of like their contribution to it, and their ability to keep a good sense of humor about it.
And you know, Josh, that I agree. I've often say that Marines are some of the funniest people I've ever met. And I think some of that does have to do, of course, with, you know, what your training, your induction, your indoctrination. I'm looking at, we have a clinical psychologist here, Rich Kensinger, who I know will want to ask, or, you know, I've maybe put it in the chat about how you dealt with trauma. You know, both of you lived through combat, and combat is traumatic. You know, you seem to be able to kind of laugh it off, tell stories about it. But is there a kind of a tougher healing process that both of you have gone through, or are going through?
Do you want to take that?
Everything that happened in the Marine Corps, I look at as past history, because it was past history. And if you can't make fun of yourself and the situation you're in, well, you're probably in the wrong business. So that relates to what Josh was saying again. So
yeah, that was Pops had told me that early on in my career. He probably doesn't remember when he told me this, but he's like, every day in the Marine Corps, it won't be fun, but it's probably going to be funny. You know, and that's a pretty key distinction, that if you have the right, you know, kind of mental approach to it, maintain your sense of humor. That's all you got, really, at that point, right?
That's all you have. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Sean?
Well, my question sort of piggybacks off of that a little bit, is the sense of, you don't find many father-son duos that have served like you both have. So were you able to lean on each other a little bit in dealing with those tough to talk about, tough to deal with situations that you may have experienced in the military?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I was exposed to his brand of kind of gallows humor pretty early on as a kid. So I think I was like, mentally, I probably was better equipped and kind of prepared to deal with kind of the you know, the more hardcore trauma aspect of it, of, you know, seeing civilians that got hit, little girls with their nose blown off, and just, you know, really horrific stuff like
horrific,
that happens. And again, and it's like, it's, you know, the world's not a fair place. Evil exists. There are bad things that happen. I think specifically with a lot of the Marines, that at least in my platoon, you know, there were some issues like, what are we even in Iraq for? Like, what is, you know, we got guys getting killed and stuff. Like, what is this all about? But at the end of the day, I think they were all able to kind of like they were able to rest easy in the fact that they killed a lot of really bad dudes, you know, right? These are guys that, had they lived, would have gone on, just victimized other people for decades, right? And they're not walking the earth anymore. And that's, you know, that's because the young guys in my platoon, you know, put them in the ground. So they've always got that to look back on, no matter, you know, all the macro political, geopolitical aspects aside. Like, who cares about any of that, right?
Right.
You guys, you get, they took out some guys that would have done nothing but victimize other women and children and other Iraqis for years.
Well, which all this conversation reminds me of one issue I want to bring up, and that's PTSD. PTSD, I always thought, because I thought the Marine Corps thought you should think that, was that if you think you've got PTSD at all, shake it off. And if you don't, you're not strong enough to handle it. I mean, you're weak.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all of that changed when I was in college. I went to University of Central Arkansas. Robert D. Baumgartner, a veteran of Quezon, was part of my intergroup, and Rick Cagle. Rick Cagle was also And they lived in a trailer park. And one day, Bobby called me and he said, I can't find Rick. And he was, and Rick had, now that I look back on it, I see the very obvious signs of PTSD, but I did not then. And anytime we'd start the conversation, I'd always say, well, grow up, get it behind you and all that.
Yeah.
Well, we had just a seasonal storm that moved through the place. And when Bobby called me, he said, I can't find him and I'm worried about him. So please come help me look for him. Well, they found him. He was in a ditch behind the trailer park, and he had eaten a bullet. And that's when I realized that, okay, I'm wrong for thinking the way I do. So I just wanted to interject that.
But that's what it took to
Yeah.
shake you from your tough kind of Marine attitude.
From my attitude of saying, get over it.
Yeah, right.
Because there's and Rick could not get over it.
Would you say, this is a tough question, that the Marines should do better at preparing Marines for getting out, for dealing with the psychological problems that might lay ahead? Do you think that is something that should be addressed, or maybe is being addressed, even though it wasn't maybe in your day?
Yeah, you could probably answer that much better.
Yeah, I think the Marine Corps did a fair job of that, at least while I was in. And granted, I've been retired for a while now, but that's if nothing else, I think all that stuff is probably trending in the right direction.
Yeah.
Just through being more communicative about it and being open about it. And my current wife, she retired from the Navy. She's a mental health provider in the Navy. So she's gone through a lot of that. And there's other issues too that are perhaps maybe like a little bit more controversial, but screening potential recruits as they come in. A lot of the ones there's some causation's hard to prove, but there's definitely a correlation between people that have some of the worst kind of manifestations of PTSD and trauma that they may have experienced even before they came in the Marine Corps, right? And so if you know that on the front end, there are ways to potentially address, maybe some more tailored or kind of like specialized ways to address that, I think, with because it's not a one size fits all approach, right? Human psychology it's a weird thing. So it's hard to kind of take the Marine Corps like doctrinal blanket. Okay, everybody get in the classroom. Here's some PowerPoints about how you deal with it or whatever. I do think the Marine Corps, I think the armed forces in general are getting better about kind of tailoring care to the individual. So
yeah,
at least that seemed to be the trend.
And I think that's all of what you say is so wise and important, that just because a veteran is suffering from a mental illness doesn't necessarily mean it's service connected. And I think that's something we should keep that in mind. Bobbles, you're a Marine.
If it's not, there might be like a separate treatment that can better address that than than what's on the books. So
right.
And if not, they shouldn't. It should have been vetted before they ever came in, and they should, not be a Marine.
Right, Bob.
Yes, sir. Colonel Bates, I know you served in Golf Company 2-5 in Vietnam. I supported Golf and Echo Company 2-5 in the Gulf War, Desert Shield, Desert Storm as Lance Corporal. I was an LAI scout. And I just want to let you know, sir, the history and the spirit of 2-5 was very much with us. It was a real inspiration to us young Marines. We were 19 to 21 years old on average in 1991. And I just wanted to thank you so much for your incredible service. So Semper Fidelis to you, sir.
Thank you much. And you probably know this already, but 2-5 is the most decorated battalion in the Marine Corps. So
I most certainly do. They let us know almost every day.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. My good friend my good friend Andy Niggett, who's on this call, who is a member of 2-5, he made sure that I did not proceed with this interview until I understood that it was the most decorated Marine Corps history. Barb Smith asks, how did you self-frag?
I'm sorry, I
Oh,
don't.
when you fragged yourself?
Oh,
Okay.
very quickly, I was on a listening post on 6th July, backing up 2 days, the 4th of July. Nong San Hill was overran by the NVA. We were on Sparrowhawk. Sparrowhawk is the quick reaction team out of Anwa. And being on Sparrowhawk just means that you are. I mean, back then there's no special training. It just meant you're next in line to go to where Marines are about to get hurt. So we could actually hear the sounds of the gunfire and all that on Nong San Hill. We mounted Amtraks to get there. We got to the bottom of the hill, and it was the closest to hand combat that I had ever seen. And I knew that I was not going to make it through the night. I just knew that I wouldn't, but I did, without a scratch. There was one Medal of Honor recipient from there posthumously. Well, when we got to the top, and everything was destroyed. The We set up the perimeter and all that. Well, on the night of the 6th of July, 2 days later, and incidentally, I'm sure that the 4th of July was deliberate because of they wanted to make the NVA wanted to make a statement. On the 6th of July, I was in charge of a listening post. A listening post is, for those who may not know, you go out in front of the wire and you find cover and concealment and you wait and listen. You don't want to engage at all. But we had no Prick 25s, the radios. I mean, we had a few in the company, but certainly we didn't rate them at the point. We just didn't have enough. So it was just uh, before it got dark, we set in, and you always pick a place you set in case you're being watched. Then as soon as it's dark, you move over, a few meters to up another place that's protected. Well, we had some concealment. We had some brush, but we didn't have any cover, and I was worried about that. But that was what we were assigned. The moon started to come up early in the evening, and we had comm wire to wake us. We were 50% watch. There was four of us, and no, there was actually five of us. So it was kind of a fire team plus. But we had comm wire wrapped around our wrist, so that when every other Marine would sleep, and then you'd get the pull the wire, wake you up, and then you're on watch.
Yeah.
Well, because the 02 to 04 watch is the absolute hardest, I chose to do that so that the other Marines could get rest. Well, I just backed off, laying on my helmet, and I started feeling a jerk. And I jerked, and then about to pull me apart, a jerk. So I woke up really quick and was looking. And the deal was, since I was a senior man on the LP, no one was supposed to fire unless they had to, until I fired. Uh, the 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 deal is we had at random where we knew we had booby traps basically, and had M26 grenades and a MRE, not an MRE, but a CRAT can, and would have the line so that if anyone did trip it, it would pop and blow and hopefully get them. Well, as I woke and got to looking really hard, about maybe 10 or 12 meters in front of me, I could see a shadow. And he'd take a step and stop and wait. He'd take a step and stop and wait. And I was thinking, wait a minute, this is not going to work, because in another two or three times, 2 or 3 steps, he's going to be right in our midst. So the all these things went through my brain housing group very quickly. I thought about the John Wayne stuff. None of that would work, because if you try to take them out with a K-bar, it's going to cause a lot of noise, and then you become a target from the NVA coming up the hill. So I finally had to make the decision very, very quickly. So I pulled a pin on an M26 and just kind of shoved it out in front of me. That may be one of the reasons I don't hear well, but I still don't remember the sound, but I remember the bright white flash. And then after everything settled down, which it didn't for a long time, I realized I'd wounded myself and two other of my Marines. So, but all of them superficial wounds. I mean, everybody got over it quickly. But what happened is when I pushed the grenade out in front, the NVA kind of knew that he was targeted, but he was kind of jumping around trying to figure out where he's going to be. And in the meantime, it blew up, and it literally it blew his ass out. And that was one of the more traumatic moments, or traumatic nights, because he lay there until almost daylight, probably yelling for his mother, his dad, or whatever. But he died probably 30 minutes or so before daylight. But okay, that's the story behind it.
Boy, is that a story. What a wonderful story to end this program on, John. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And I've been remiss in not welcoming some new people to our program. One is Colonel Mike Fallon, who was mentioned. Mike, you're a Marine Vietnam veteran. Could you identify yourself and when you served and where you served?
I was always trying to catch up with John Bates. Started in 66.
I know, Mike.
Good to see you, John. 66 to 99. And they kicked me out. And the country was at war. So I got to put on jeans and a sweatshirt and became a defense contractor. Some people spit in the ground, but then supported Iraq and Afghanistan for the next 22 years. So the Marines been paying me for about the last 58 years.
How about that? And you can see, I can see behind you a lot of artifacts from your career.
John will tell you, if you stay in long enough, the stuff they don't want, they'll give to you.
Mike, it's great seeing you again. It's really, really good to see you.
And I think, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I tell you, John's got way more parachute jumps than I do. And I'm glad to hear that he's still jumping. So
I'm got 3,500 plus, I think. I quit logging them 10, 15 years ago.
3,500 jumps?
Yes.
Yeah, but he stopped counting 10 years ago, Todd. So hey, my deep I'm going to shut up. My deep regards to Jumpin' John Bates. Josh, I'm going to buy your book.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
And then I believe we have Ted Steinmetz. Ted, if you want to say hello.
Ted, we're looking for you.
Hey, there you go. Hey, sir. It's Ted Steinhauser.
Steinhauser. Okay.
There we go. I was one of John's running mates. I actually met him at the starting line in Kona for the 1982 Ironman triathlon. And John had gotten a lot of press, a lot of Marine Corps magazines like that. So he was really an idol of mine. I was a young sergeant at the time and read all about him. He's out there running marathons and ultras with basically one lung. And, I'm a 20-year-old Marine sergeant, trying to keep up with him. I'm 6'5", and I've always looked up to him despite his height advantage to me. So, so anyways, hey sir, thanks for sending me the invite. And it's truly an honor to stay in touch with you, and you keep me motivated, even after all these years. So thank you very, very much for everything.
Come see us.
Yeah, and I'll say to Mike and to Ted, we'd love to have you join us again and maybe share some of your story. Brad will probably debate that, but we love Marines at the Veterans Breakfast Club. Would love to have you join us and talk about your service. So thank you for joining us tonight. And thank you, Josh. Thank you, John, for sharing a bit of your story. I would look forward to reading your book, Josh, and maybe having you come on again and talk about.
Sure, we'd love to. Thanks.
All right. Take care, guys.
Appreciate it.
Good night, everybody.
Okay, thank you.